the fatal mistake that ended the Chinese economy. By all accounts, China is an economic superpower. Most experts actually take the position that China will overtake the US in terms of economic productivity, and that we are sure to see the decline of the US economy in the coming days. However, the boom behind the Chinese economy may have actually ended, and in this video, we will talk about the one crucial mistake which may dethrone Chinese economic supremacy, so stay tuned. But before we continue further, I would request you to subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Considered the world's manufacturing hub, China was able to really provide the steam in this economic locomotive due to its unique age group distribution. This actually makes a lot of sense. Industrial production is heavily dependent on able labor supply. This is one reason why such a massive economic production could not be expected from Japan, which is currently suffering from an aging population. Another critical component of the labor supply which gave China an edge was its cheap labor. As long as labor is cheap, it from competitive productivity. But if the labor wages get too expensive, it will actually diminish the competitive potential of these industries. One important example we can talk about is how globalization actually led to labor migration from Europe and the US to South Asia and Southeast Asia. Prior to globalization, textile manufacturing industries lost their competitive edge in Europe and the US. As a result, most textile products, including garment manufacturing, shifted towards Southeast Asia. The primary reason for shipping these jobs over to these countries was because of low wage costs as well as poor regulation of labor laws, which actually led to a lot of criticism on how premium sports brands like Nike and Adidas produced their apparel in sweatshops in Indonesia. The reason I mentioned how globalization shifted the economic production from the West towards the East is important because it will also help to explain how the Chinese economy is suffering from the same issues. But the question is, isn't Chinese labor considered to be one of the cheapest labor across the world? And if that's not the case, then what mistake precisely resulted in this phenomenon today, and which companies are moving their production out of China? Okay, so first, a little historical context. Chinese labor costs $1 less than the average wage rate in India, the Philippines, and Thailand. This is not the case anymore, as The Economist has recently reported that the average wage per hour is 27 cents in China. The wage increase puts labor costs in China 4 times more than in India, the Philippines, and in Thailand. This means that Chinese labor will be considered more expensive than it used to be in the global market today. This radical shift towards wage labor demands an explanation. So let's go back to 1990 when China had a very low wage labor because workers were assigned by the central government, which meant that jobs were permanent and socio-economic mobility was pretty much limited. Wages were determined by the central government by the grade issued on the basic level of service. However, this system of remuneration did not result in higher productivity, since length of service is not a good indicator for productivity or for product quality. In fact, according to some indicators, length of service may be negatively correlated with productivity or quality, which is exactly what profit-oriented industries are looking for. The faulty mechanism for determining higher wages led to financial insolvency of the many state-owned corporations, which persuaded CCP to let profitable enterprises to pay higher wages and bonuses to more productive workers. This was a revolutionary moment in recent Chinese economic history. Things took a further hit when China started privatizing state-owned corporations. Privatizing state enterprises meant that workers were fired and they had to look for employment in the private sector. As a result, employment in the private sector rose from 33% in the 1990s to 79% in 2010. The main incentive that these private industries offered was higher pay packages for more skilled labor, which meant that if their performance improved, so too would their wages. Another reason why this change was possible was due to the population decrease in 2022. By 2022, China's population decreased by 850,000. Another demographic change in China's population was the increase of population aged 65 and over to 13%. One of the reasons for that happening was a drop in the fertility rate in China. In 1965, on average, children born in a Chinese family, which decreased to less than 2 in 1999. We all know why that happened. Chinese one-child policy in the 70s had led to population control measures. One of these measures included imposition of heavy fines on families which had more than one child. This was perhaps the most critical mistake made by the Chinese authorities 50 years ago. By artificially imposing one-child policy, China had set the wheels of its economic demolition in motion. China today does not have the freely available and abundant labor, which actually led to the rise of the Chinese economy. Now, you may be wondering that negative population growth is not that uncommon across the world. Why does China only face such grave consequences? This is true. China is not the only country to face aging populations. Japan is trying to attract immigrants too. Circumstances for China are a bit different, especially since it artificially curbed its population growth at a stage when its economy was nascent. What are the implications of the one-child policy? Shrinkage in a labor supply in a country when its overall economy was not robust has led to limited governmental capacity and a growing elderly population. The aging population in Germany and Japan has access to more resources than the aging workers in China. This puts China in a very precarious position. The average wage worker who is getting older quicker has less resources, but at the same time does not have a diverse set of skills as compared to developed countries. This does not mean that China's economic progress will halt. Rather, it means that China will never experience the earth-shattering economic explosion that uplifted almost 800 million out of economic impoverishment. China has realized the grim economic picture of tomorrow and has put its own remedies forward. China has aimed to change its image of being a cheap manufacturing hub, innovation-geared economy, which has value-oriented products to offer to its global market. The plan is to rival value-laden goods coming out of South Korea, Japan, and/or Germany. But China is not operating in a vacuum either. Like any other superpower, it has regional rivals. For instance, the South China Sea conflicts with the Philippines, Indonesia, India, Vietnam, and Japan cast doubt over China's projection of a value-oriented economy. Taiwan is a huge player in semiconductor chip production, which gives it huge importance in the global political economy. The rising tension between China and Taiwan can make matters worse for China, especially since the US has started supporting the Taiwanese case for autonomy from CCP. The visit by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan after Biden became president was seen with a lot of suspicion by China. It was during this visit that China tested its flagship hypersonic missile as well. The reason I talk about these geopolitical tensions is that the chance of economic sanctions being imposed on China are significant. China has not cut down its trade relations with Russia despite US insistence. In fact, China's reliance on cheap Russian gas has become all the more visible since China cannot jeopardize its behemoth economic engines. It needs access to gas resources. It is for this reason that China has not officially condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All of this puts China in the crosshairs of a possible military crisis, which can damage foreign direct investment into Chinese businesses. This may explain why companies are now moving out of China and looking elsewhere to establish their businesses. These businesses have lots of options to choose from, including Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. Apple will be manufacturing its iPhone 14 in India. Sony has plans to relocate its camera production factory, and Google is looking to produce its phones in Vietnam. Will all of these factors slow down the Chinese economy? Feel free to comment down below. Thanks for watching till the end, and please give this video a thumbs up. See you in the next one.